I sit here as a brown woman who people sometimes misidentify because I have short hair. I believe that I was born and am a lesbian, which causes some people an issue. Fine, I haven't got a problem with issue as long as there's no hate.
So what was Dee before she realised her lived experience has made her Dee today?
My mum would say something like, if I gave you 3 bags of sweets and asked you to go and hide and eat them without anyone looking, where would you go?
When you start sharing your thoughts, it's the human nature is to be feel heard, seen, valued, and all that validation comes from there.
We're still part of the UK where black women are more likely to die from childbirth because they're black.
So what's your biggest take from your story, how you implement it in your work?
I had a transplant, so I've got another part of someone's body in me. If you look in the mirror every day, I look out as someone else's eye every day.
Welcome to Her Own Narrative, and today's guest is Dee Roberts-Molloy, HR leader, coach, mentor, TEDx host, and inclusion champion. But above all, she's a woman who leads with heart, courage, and lived experience. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's talk about Dee and the lived experience. I know we've had a little chat here and you are actually a big champion and you talk about stories, lived experience and how everyone's shaped. So what was Dee before she realised her lived experience has made her Dee today?
I don't think I knew what lived experience meant, but I was born in Birmingham, West Midlands, to an Asian father and a white mother. Very multicultural upbringing, all different colours of the rainbow, brown, black, white, people that had come here, first generation, third, fourth, fifth, all different types, multiple languages, all gorgeous food, all aunties, all uncles, all people that you respected in the 80s. And I thought that was normal. And you went to someone's house and maybe auntie couldn't speak to you in English, so you spoke using sign or communication or hungry, or you would say salam or shalom. You know, you would sit and eat on the floor or on a table. You would take shoes off or shoes on. None of these things were necessarily taught. It was all about respecting your elders, respecting people in your community. Everyone has a different element of belief, who they believe in, what they believe. But fundamentally, my parents brought me up to respect people and your intention is the best thing. Roll on 20 years, and I think in my 30s, I suddenly realised that's our lived experience. Every experience that we have shapes who we are.
100%.
And we either are brave enough to talk about it regularly and openly. There are times when our voice really matters, that we should be telling that story. Sometimes to get people to have that diversity of thought and challenge their view, not to change it necessarily, but to challenge it, share a story. And being brought up in a very multi-religious upbringing as well. So Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Quaker, all of it was stories.
Yeah.
All of it was, not everyone knew how to read a particular book or go to temple or go to mosque or go to church, but everything was about a story.
Yes.
Everything was about giving to others or charitable or your intention or doing the right thing, or no matter what, they're a sister, no matter what, they're a brother. And I think as I grew up, I realised that that wasn't the same thinking that everybody had. And actually people were trying to segregate and put people into boxes and keep people in a place and not allowed to be a leader or challenging what they ate or how they looked or the colour of their skin. And I think I suddenly realised I have to start telling stories.
Yes, I'm loving this. You know what? You've hit the point, hit the nail on the head, because see, my son, my little one, he's very religious, and he loves listening to religious stories. So we are Hindus and he loves listening to stories, but he listens to every story. And my mum is a storyteller, especially when it comes to the religious stories. And he takes it on, but he asks a lot of questions. He's only 6, but he's curious like hell. And a lot of questions, when he starts asking, he's bringing religious element to it. And when I start looking into it, I always say, actually, if you think about it, what you just said, all stories are the same. They're about humankind. They're about kindness. They're about giving. They're about But what you said is people are putting them
Yeah.
into boxes by political or
Yep.
religious views, or however, it's to segregate, it's divide
Yep.
and rule,
Yep.
isn't it? It's
Yep.
simply that.
Yep.
But when you start sharing your thoughts, it's the human nature is to be feel heard, seen, valued, and all that validation comes from there.
Or for me, the big one that I think encompasses all of those is belonging.
That's it.
And what I mean by that is, in my professional world of working in HR, some people see that as a challenging role, but our job is to make sure that people in the workplace feel they belong.
100.
That the organisation is belonging to the community, the society that they're in, the product that they're creating, that is giving back if they can. I think belonging is the word that I feel comfortable with at the moment.
I love that.
I've always felt quite difficult about EDI, EDIB. They're letters, they get lost, people don't hear. And I think what I've learned about a story is most of us, if we start once upon a time, if you're born in England or your children were and you had to read to them or understand, you can finish that sentence. We'll all say a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
If we start singing a song, some people will carry on the song, will remember the beat. And there's something about, for thousands of years, without written language, my dad was illiterate, couldn't read or write, but spoke 7 languages. Why? Because if you can hear, you are more likely to be able to repeat.
Yes.
So when my mum brought me up, and my brother and sister, and she wouldn't ever tell us off or challenge us. If we asked a question like your son, why, she'd give us an answer.
Yes.
But in a story.
That's right.
So why shouldn't you steal? Why are people bad? Why don't people help auntie down the road? Why do we have to give our food to someone else? Why do we have to help out on a weekend to charities? And my mum would say something like, if I gave you 3 bags of sweets and asked you to go and hide and eat them without anyone looking, where would you go? Wow. And that's from an old Indian story, South Asian story of one son goes and hides and thinks that his parent can't look and eats the sweets and comes back and goes, I'll finish them, and the parents go. The second one disappears off into the field and he goes, no one can see me and I'll eat the sweets. And he comes back, oh, Dad, Mum, look how brilliant I am, I ate the sweets. And the third one comes back and gives the sweets back and goes, surely someone's always watching me. Now, from a religious story, you'd say God.
God is watching you. Yes.
From a community story, you'd say auntie and uncle, everyone's watching me. Or from a third perspective, you'd say, I'm not here on my own. My intention. What is my intention?
Amazing.
Even from instruction of an adult.
Yes.
And so I think I didn't realise it at the time, but that lived experience has then meant that I'm very hot on community.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't fit into the norm of what people would think of my lived experience, why I tell more stories. I sit here as a brown woman who people sometimes misidentify because I have short hair. I believe that I was born and am a lesbian, which causes some people an issue. Fine. I haven't got a problem with issue as long as there's no hate, because I'm not hating them back.
That's your opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Opinions and feelings are really important.
Yeah.
But I have short hair because I have South Asian hair. My hair,
And you like it.
My hair
It's
grows
yours.
this way. From a teenager, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
My mum paid for me to go to Caribbean hairdressers to get it relaxed. Having Irish and South Asian hair when it is thick and curly and just chop it off was my opinion, and I've kept it.
Yeah,
I've kept
and
it
that's
short.
your personal
Exactly.
liking. So who's
Yeah.
anyone to have an opinion on it? Even if you have an opinion, that's yours.
Yeah. So now
Yeah.
I have it as part of my identity.
Yeah.
But when I have a wife, and me and my wife got married, and we moved into our local community, she couldn't understand why I was going to go and knock on everyone's door and put an envelope through and say, open house.
Oh, so just for the viewers,
Yeah.
your wife is,
Claire Roberts-Molloy.
and she's white.
Yeah, she's white.
So that's why she wouldn't understand where you're, because that's cultural.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think white English cultural.
That's right.
So I think there was an element of the Irish element of my mum's side of the family was open door.
That's
but in a
right.
different way to maybe how South Asian open door.
Yeah.
And on that point, actually, I spent a good while working with and living with some Polish people when they came over, when I was renting property. And I thought it was beautiful that at their celebrations, and don't quote me if I've got it wrong, but their celebrations, they always lay an extra plate.
Yeah.
And so no matter where we come from in the world, no matter what the colour of our skin, the language we speak, the food we eat, what we believe in, what we don't believe in, what our political alignments are, they laid an extra plate. And that was because if a stranger knocks at the door, you
There is
provide.
one there. Yep. Yep.
And Hinduism, Sikhism, Islam, all those different cultures, if you're not anything, Jainism, Buddhism.
Christianity as well. Exactly the same.
And a lot of that structure is that you will give a percent, or you will give back, or you will give to charity, or you will give zakat, or you will do something. And for me, I was just like, that's not even a religious thing.
No.
That's just a cultural thing.
That's just humankind,
Yeah.
isn't it? That's what humans are meant to be. We're
Yeah.
meant to feel connected. We're meant to feel belonged, and we're meant to be there for each other. Why do we thrive with each other?
Yeah.
We're not meant to be living in isolation. We're meant to be living together and bringing, thrive together. That's why the communities, the little villages started forming. Then these villages became big cities.
Yep.
But now I think it's going full circle and people are becoming isolated. But
And I
there
think-
is a craving
And
for
that's the thing, isn't it? So sometimes you have to be the brave one.
That's right.
And even if you are your only tribe, so you say thrive, I say tribe.
Yeah.
If you're the only one, I don't want to go and find people exactly like me.
No.
That would be awful.
Yeah.
I wanna go-
don't want another one of you.
I would-
You got me.
If I can't chop down the tree, find someone that can chop down the tree.
That's right.
If I can't drive the car, find someone that can drive the car. If I can't cook, I'm vegetarian, so I'm not going to cook meat for anyone. Find the person that can cook the meat for someone.
100%.
So I think the tribe is about how you use all of the skills that you have, or willing to learn, or willing to challenge each other to get the best of everything. And when we moved in, I deliberately did that. Claire was a bit taken aback. The kids were like, "Oh," and I said, "But we'll always feel like we're a family on the street that's separate."
Yeah.
And we have watched 80, 90-something-year-old women in our street that have lived there for 40, 50, 60 years, that have passed away over the last couple of years. And the people that have come out and said goodbye, that have gone and cleared the garden to make sure when family come because it's an empty house, that have heard that someone's not well and have taken food over, that look after each other's animals, that check in on each other's kids while you're away. That's what I remember as a child.
Right.
And I think it gives you those life skills that I have 3 stepchildren, Claire's birth mother, and I think that this generation really struggle with that. They're really good on technology. They're really good at quick answers, really good at fast, need now, want now. And talking about your son, I think that's the whole, the exploration of what is, and knowing how to be street smart or life skill, engage with someone, make eye contact.
That's right.
In HR, we're really struggling with young people coming in and not knowing how to
They don't know how to
communicate.
look at each other. They're just like there, and it's confidence as well because they're in isolation. They don't know how to talk to people.
No.
That's not. We were brought up exactly the same way. If we were on a holiday and we're coming back, I remember my mum's, and where we live, we didn't have a lot of family, so it was more reliance on friends, which my mum was amazing at making connections, and if we are on the way, even like our shopping was done before we arrive. Like, all the basics, milk, bread, stuff is at home. There is a meal ready for that day. We don't, when my mom comes home, it's not because she's spoiled. It's because she's loved and someone cares for her, that they've come back and they'll be shattered with little kids. And that's called being in a community, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you're saying, is you have a street and people are a community there.
Yeah. And the connection.
That's it.
And one of our neighbours is looking to sell their house for a different reason and quite a lot of us are saddened by that, happy for them. But you wouldn't normally get that type of connection from a neighbour.
No.
And they're going to go off and do amazing things and live their life and continue. But if you didn't have that connection by reaching out in the first place, and I think that's where we're getting isolated now, where the rhetoric at the moment is brown. So for some people, I am brown, I'm not brown enough. For some people, I'm white, not white enough. It goes on and on.
It's not enough.
I know. Whereas the global majority is predominantly brown, because very few people are actually black when it comes to the colour of black. But that's a whole nother discussion to have. And my brother-in-law is black, and we're a rainbow family. We're a beautiful family of everyone. Yeah. But I think there's something around people where we started to have labels to help us or to shine a light and tell our story, and now being used maybe against us.
Against us.
And I think we need to have that connection. to
And
keep
what
to
are
keep
the
together.
labels? Who are making the labels? Why do you need a label? Like you said, you are a brown woman and you think you were born lesbian. But who is labeling you for that?
Well, I think I've been brave enough to label myself, but I work in organisation where those stats matter. I work in a country where those stats matter. I think we work in a country where we have politics where that matters because of where funding goes. And you know, we some of us get choose to live where we live, and some people don't.
Yeah.
And I think that matters
Yeah.
as to what you can get and what you can't get. We're still part of the UK where black women are more likely to die from childbirth because they're black. Brown women, again. There's lots of things that aren't blatantly there, but are just part of our society now that we need to keep telling these stories so people recognise them.
And we need to be bold enough to
Yeah.
come and own them stories and create a change, because
Yeah.
if you don't tell the story, no one's changing
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
And that's the whole essence of. So I said before we started, that was the first time I attended TEDx, and it opened my doors, because today I have you. I've had a few people come and sit on this couch, and we've had amazing conversations. It's because they're bold enough to tell their stories.
And bold enough that I'm one of the hosts and been one of the hosts for a couple of years, but it's been running for several years. And Claire, my wife, set up that TEDx Wolverhampton. No one else did it. She applied for the licence. And this is me praising a woman. She just happens to be my wife. But a woman stood up and said, why not in Wolverhampton? Why not us? Who's applying? Let's apply. Got lots of amazing, we're all volunteers around to support. If you look across the years, and they're all on YouTube, if you look up TEDx Wolverhampton, if you look at the talks, some of them are not earth-shattering, but soul-shattering.
Yeah.
It really opens you up to
Wow.
wow, why, who, and it just goes on, and then you start thinking, crikey, this is incredible. And then year upon year upon year, now we've got people that, can I talk? I want to apply. Can I talk? I want to apply. And it's through application. It's through, you know, not seeing anyone's name, where they live, where they're from. It's just about what story do you want to tell?
And you know what, you're saying that it is so interesting, because at that point when there were so many stories, I don't know how many speakers were there.
I think we had 9 or 10 and then 3 fireside chats.
There we go.
Yeah.
So obviously you have your stories that resonate with you at that point, and there's certain stories that don't resonate, but there is a story, and how it makes an impact. Because I think this was past this weekend or something, and we were having a chat about, my husband was watching the documentary on Taliban, and we were talking about, you know, deployment and all that. And you know what stood out for me? The guy who spoke about PTSD for
Armed forces.
But at that point, it was a story. It was a soul shattering story, because I understood him, but it just stayed there. But at some point later on in the conversation, months and months later, I thought about that story, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so crazy. No one actually thinks about these guys.
And that's what stories do.
Yeah.
If you read a document or a newspaper or scrolled on your screen, you might think, oh, I think I remember something about the fact that he told you that story.
Yeah.
And his emotion was in it. Pete, who PTSD from being in armed forces, from having to deal with the death of citizens in armed forces, that's what his PTSD is about. And then you watch something like that and it gives you another side to the story.
It does, because I was talking to somebody who's been applying for employment somewhere and could not thrive because he doesn't know how to do a civilian job. He just doesn't, and that's what Pete was saying. Who's taught them? Who has held their hands that, okay, fine, you're back from Afghanistan, but now you're in the normal world. What do I do in the normal world? I don't know how to live in the normal world.
Which is exactly the same if you flipped the story.
Yes.
If the two of us suddenly had to go, someone would have to teach us.
Yeah, how would we do
What
it?
do you need us to do? How do we do it? And I think that's really important about sometimes when someone tells you the story, literally flip it.
That's right.
Because it makes you even think, what? And I spend most of my professional life doing diversity of thought. Many people cannot change this.
No.
People have a view on whether you can change this.
Yeah.
Some people can't even change their names or
Yeah.
their belief system or structure. So actually, don't worry about this. Just have diversity of thought.
That's right. That's
And I spend my
power.
time when I tell people, how are you recruiting people? How are you teaching them? How are you supporting them? I don't mind if it's a group of white men in front of me. As long as you've done your homework for diversity of thought.
That's right.
So if one is second generation, if one has a different ability, if one has a rainbow family like me, then they're my brothers anyway.
Yeah.
What you can't have is lots of people thinking the same, lived the same, done the same, very similar lived experience, and expect us to change anything.
No, you're so right, because what you said earlier to begin with, when we started the conversation, you're like, you don't want another one of you.
No.
You want someone who can do X, Y, Z, what I can't do. And that's what will thrive in a company. How can you have everyone doing the same thing? You'll fight like cats and dogs, because that's my job. Why are you taking my job? I need somebody. Well, it's not my strength to be brought your strength over, isn't it? That's what
Absolutely.
that's inclusion of that. But why do so? Where, you know, when you got into HR world, and obviously your lived experience and the way you think is beautiful. I love it. I love it. But not many think like that. There is still a lot of old school leadership thoughts.
Yep.
Old school, like, you know, it's leaders got to dictate. Leaders got to, but it's all about connection. I feel people thrive when they feel included. I feel
Yep.
people will bring their best self when they feel belonged.
Yep.
But as a HR, and it's all about people and processes. Like, I'm a process-driven person. I would never, ever argue against it. But at the same time, you got to get the emotional intelligence out. What are your challenges there? And how do you kind of, you know, bring it out and say, I know you've been in the field for a very long time, but it's still challenging.
I think even more so. I think as the history of leadership and leaders, yes, you'll have your dictators, yes, you'll have democracy, yes, you'll have your listening to the people, yes, you'll have your we voted for, no, we didn't vote for. But I think it's even more complicated now, because there's so much information in our pockets on our mobile phone that you can research very quickly, you can be influenced very quickly, you can network very quickly.
Yep.
You can connect with someone very quickly. And so the challenge for me is two main things. One, they have to listen to my story, so I have to get them to even engage with me for me to be able to tell the story.
Right.
Now, that could be a professional story, that could be my story, that could be a story about what a good leader is, a good manager, how you lead people, how you lead process, how we review, how we take feedback. It could be a million things that I'm discussing with a leader.
Yeah.
It could be the challenge of, in the last couple of years, male leaders saying to me, I understand what you're saying, but the practicality of doing it to a female, to someone that's black, to someone that's brown, to someone with a disability, I fear having those challenging conversations. And so the world has spun on its head. And what I'm going to say now is challenging for some people, but I just want them to hear it. I'm not asking them to love it or like it. Just respect that I'm saying that. The white male is now feeling very oppressed, not seen, doesn't feel they can be challenging in a way because they're a white male. And I'm just using that character. Why? Because two of my sons are that. Why? Because the history of what white men have done before them is now on their shoulders.
Yep.
And we brought them up when they were younger saying, if the door opens for you, keep it open. If you're pulled up onto a platform, lift someone else up. And now we're having conversations with them in their early 20s, teaching them how to open the door, teaching them how to unlock it, teaching them what positive action means, or hiring on merit. You are hired on merit. That's why we take names out so people can't make assumptions. Now, that's a huge challenge to suddenly think that the world has reversed, and maybe that's why we've got the problems that we have.
Yeah.
Of the Andrew Tates and the males taking stuff back. And I absolutely disagree with all of that. But my job as HR is to have to balance the risk against the positive and say, actually, I can only focus on inclusion and belonging because now I have so many underrepresented groups.
Yes.
Now I have so much intersectionality. Now I have so many things that people are relating to. I have people that are adopted parents, foster parents, second marriage, third marriage, step parents. I have people that have got in-laws that speak English, don't speak English, eat different food. And you just go, actually, this is beautiful. What we're doing is, because we're in work, we're trying to pocket them in places. So my big thing at the moment is just inclusion.
Yeah.
How do we include as many people as we can proactively.
My question here, sorry to interrupt, but why is all that diversity a problem in the first place?
It's not a problem, but because we haven't stepped back societally, so you can do it in an organisation, you can do it locally.
Yeah.
But when there are things like laws or acts or
There we
what
go.
the society, then it's bigger. And we all have to then be telling our stories higher and higher and wider for it to have the impact.
So what's your biggest take from your story, how you implement it in your work?
What do you mean?
Like your own story of inclusion and also, your diverse cultural background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in every job I go in, I ask for a platform to be able to tell my story. I put pictures up of my mum, I put pictures up of my brother-in-law, ask them to challenge what their view is visually. If I tell them a little bit about the character, the persona, what is your view? My mum wears a headscarf, people think that she's got cancer or she's a gypsy. My brother-in-law's black, they think that he might be a criminal or, having to work for someone or a low-paid job. I've recently started to put my sons up because they were younger before. My oldest son, people will take a view on that he looks Jewish or he looks Middle Eastern. He's Wolverhampton as they come. And you start to get people to do it, and then you start going, actually, that's my mum, that's my brother, that's me. I had a transplant. What? Yeah, so I've got another part of someone's body in me. You start telling these stories as to, if you look in the mirror every day, I look out as someone else's eye every day. I really struggled as a teenager, struggled to start seeing. No one believed me, went to an all-girls school in Birmingham. They told my mum, teenage girls, what they want is glasses, braces, they want to all look the same.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so for 5 years really struggled, finally got diagnosed, and they said if you'd come 4 years ago we could have helped.
Oh my gosh.
Those stories make a difference.
Yes.
Why? So when you work in a housing association and someone says, I'm struggling with my housing, there's mould on the wall, help me, I've got 4 kids, I can tell the story of, I've been homeless before, I've worked with homeless people. It's not that they're trying to cause a problem. Look at the domino effect. Oh, I've never had to worry about what's in my bank. Well, let me tell you a story about why someone would worry about that. Well, let me tell you the story about why do they feed them fast food? Well, because if you've got £5 in your pocket, it's easier to buy a bag of chips and feed everyone than put the fuel, buy the potato, cook the potato, and then feed. Because you buy the bag of chips and you know what change you've got. Before I went into HR, people with complex needs, mental health, drug addiction, that's what I started my career in. And they would shop at Poundland. Why? Because they'd fallen out of school. No one had taught them. So you go in with £10. How many products do you come out with? Is that cost effective?
Yeah.
Is that sensible?
No.
No. So you teach them. You go with them to a supermarket and you go, expensive, not so expensive, cheap.
Wow. See, somebody doesn't even think like that.
No, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Big bag of Ataflower or small bag of Ataflower? I knew that as a kid. Are we going to buy big amounts of stuff because it's cheaper? Or do you go and buy small amounts of stuff because you need it to be fresh or because you're travelling or whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
So by teaching people these things is exactly like teaching a leader. Have you had to think about what your £10 is going to get you? No.
No.
Have you had to think about where you're going to lay your head? No. Have you had to think about how you're going to pay your mortgage? No. And then when you find the one that goes, no, but, then you start to influence, then you can start networking, then you can start connecting. Have you ever had loss? What does it mean for someone to be bereaved? Come back. What about losing something?
Yeah.
Not really lost anything. Lost your keys ever? Lost your glasses? Oh, yeah. How did it make you feel? Frustrated, angry, annoyed. Okay, let's start there.
So as a HR who is actually helping the leaders to understand their employees,
Yeah.
and that would that connection bring massive performance? I don't know what's the word. Like, would you see a cultural shift in the organization?
I mean, a cultural shift takes years.
Yes,
but you start to see...
Start somewhere.
Yeah, so in the last couple of places that I've been working in, you see that managers are starting to do things such as coming to big meetings or doing video conversations or ask me a question or responding in a moment that something happens And so they put out a blog. And it's not because HR's telling them to.
No.
And it's not because we're saying, why aren't you? They're now starting to go, when do I? How do I? Could you check what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel that that's the place where we're starting to move the culture.
100%.
To be brave enough to go, when I woke up this morning and I saw that on the news, or this happened and I thought that's affecting my employees, my work, my community, so I've responded like this. I think you get better buy-in from people, whether you love it, like it, or agree with what someone's saying. If someone's doing it humbly, and I'll go back to what my mum taught me, with the right intention, you don't break that trust with them.
You don't.
If you find out they're doing it for their own benefit or not for good intention, that's when you lose the trust. And that's what's happening with big leaders around the world. That's what happens with celebrities that fall. People go, how come that celebrity came back and how come that one didn't? Because that one did it with no malice.
No.
That one did it with.
True. So true. And, that is so true, because everybody makes mistakes, everybody, but what's the intention? What was what was behind it? It wasn't malice. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't. So, it's really taking my brains here. HR in itself, if you talk about HR to them, it's like, just hire people, write some policies and put some processes in. We're talking a total different ball game altogether here. We are actually saying you want to lead from a different perspective altogether. Why do you, just give me a nutshell. Why do you think it's so important? And why do you think, as an organization who was already making, I don't know, let's talk about a big organization, say multi-million-pound business, they've been leading the way they've been leading, and they're a successful business. Now, as a HR person who is actually talking on a different tangent altogether, why do you think that leader would say, all right, I mean, I understand this completely because I'm a people's person, but why would they say, okay, fine, I need to take this on board?
Well, firstly, some of them won't, and that's diversity of thought. And there's sometimes that you need them to know the story, so that when you go, well, you make your decision then, I've given you all the facts, I've given you my story. If they make it and come back, and then you can give them the nod and go, not I told you so, but so willing to listen now. So the mistake element, absolutely. And I say that too. I manage 30 people and I say a mistake is absolutely okay because it gives you an opportunity to retake.
That's right.
If you do a mistake and hide it or pretend it didn't happen and don't put your hand up, that's when our psychological contract is done. And I think there's something about telling leaders about psychological contract. But for me, it's their legacy. I love using this word with people.
I love it.
What's your legacy? What's your legacy? So they go, so paying your mortgage fine and having money fine and this. What's your legacy? Now, if someone's got a belief structure or a religious structure or a community-based structure, you'll hear them say that in their story back to you anyway. They'll say, I work here because I want to. I haven't moved my company because I was born here. I want to give back to the community. On a Friday we finish at 1 and then we're out. You'll hear all that in them anyway. And that's the story that you then link with. So when I'm talking to you about X, remember the communities that we serve. Remember when I'm talking about Y, remember because you want to build the legacy that this stays here. So you want this to be a robust organisation so the next generation don't have to move it. No. Don't make it smaller. Don't shrink it. Oh, okay. So you find these connections with why. And if someone's really process and not people driven, go with data. Turn data into them people.
Yeah.
So you can say, but 30% of your workforce is going to retire in 3 years. What? Yeah, 30% of the people won't be here. So what are we going to do about that? Not what if you lose John and what if you lose Pete and what happens if Simon goes and what happens if... Not that. If 30 people go. So if you've got 3 years, how are you going to get them to buddy, mentor, coach the next generation so you don't lose all the stuff they know?
I'm loving this because you know what? It's not about a business. It's about the legacy. It's like, why do people want to work here? Yes, it's paying my bills. But is that it? Is that it? Isn't there more to... People used to... There was a culture when my dad worked for someone, he only ever worked one job.
Yeah.
because he loved working there.
Yep.
And then he was made redundant. So, yeah, the culture was to stay where you are and love what you do. And then the thing started like hop jobs because you're going to get more money, more money, more
Yep.
money. But there's no sense of belongingness anywhere.
No, and I think you've got to be okay for the multi-generational.
Yeah.
Some people will stay there for a long time. Some people will hop in and hop out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Leaders need to understand that's okay. But when they bring something in, make sure they leave something before they take away again. And that's part of HR as well, and how you grow the next and how people know. So leave you on this. When I go travelling and I meet someone that opens the door to a hotel or comes to me and serves me a coffee in a restaurant, and you say to them, how long have you worked here?
I love that.
And they say, since I was a young girl, a young man. And you go, why are you still here? And they don't say, because I've now become the manager of the concierge or the manager of the restaurant. Mm-hmm. They do it because they take pride in what they do.
That's right.
They do it because every person they meet is the first customer for them that day.
I love that.
And I think there's something about us as a collective in the UK where we need to just be okay with, if someone asks you where the toilet is, it's okay to say it 1,000 times because every one of them feels respected, trusted and shown the right way.
Beautiful. What an amazing conversation. Thank you, Dee. It was an honor to have you here. And I feel like we can keep talking and talking and talking because there's so much, it's alignment. And what actually makes me feel happy is so many of us are there aligned in the same way nowadays. The change is coming.
Just share our stories.
Just share our stories. Your own narrative, your own way. Don't let anyone else tell your story their way. Own it. Till next time, keep rewriting your own rules your way.